What's up, everybody? My name is Daniel Unmanageable, and this is Hard Knox Talks. Today's live production is brought to you in part by... No, let me start again. What's up, everybody? My name is Daniel Unmanageable, and this is Hard Knox Talks. Today's live production is title sponsored by Sober Buddy. Get your free sober tracker and check out their fun evidence-based tool that will help you get and stay sober at www.yoursoberbuddy.com and start your sober journey today. Today's show is also brought to you in part by Prairie Sky Recovery Center, the Elizabeth Fry Society of Saskatchewan, the Community Addictions Peer Support Association, Stronger Together Canada, peer-led support groups by Mom Stop the Harm, the Canadian Research Initiative in Substance Misuse, Quebec Atlantic Node, and Carter's Counseling. To learn more about our sponsors, visit www.hardknoxtalks.com. Today's guest, Brad Macleod, person in recovery and creator of the Sober Motivation pages on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, is here to talk a little about his journey and how he is working to bring awareness about recovery to the masses. We are going to meet him right after this.
I spent 23 years living in addiction. 16 of those years, I worked as a Red Seal tradesperson in Saskatchewan and Northern Alberta. During that time, I made many mistakes and took more than a few hard knocks. I went from tradesman to business owner to hiding from gang members and dumpster diving. But with that lived experience, I've decided to try and make a change. I've dedicated my life to raising awareness and promoting change in the fields of substance use and psychological health and safety. So join me and my guests as we take off the blinders around mental health in our communities and at work, and shine a light on what's working and what's not working in the fields of mental health and occupational health and safety. I'm Daniel Unmanageable, and I'll be your host, and this is Hard Knox Talks.
Okay, let's bring in Brad. What's up, my man?
What's up, Daniel Unmanageable?
It's good to see you today. Thanks for taking the time to join us. Is there anything you'd like to say before we get started today?
Nope, let's get started, buddy.
Let's go. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about where this all got started? How was life at home?
Yeah, for sure, man. Start at the beginning, buddy. I was born August 13th, 1987, buddy. August 13th has fallen on a few Friday the 13th over my lifespan for anybody who's into that stuff. My mom was 16 and had twins at 16. So my grandmother helped out as we still lived with them for a while. But growing up was pretty good, though. Having grandparents and everything, especially grandma helping out, buddy, you get a lot of stuff that you might not get otherwise. I think that created some problems down the road, though, because I was used to getting a lot of stuff that, you probably just things and stuff that wouldn't have happened. So early memories from childhood, man, I don't have many. From like probably 1 till 5 or so. Like, I don't know, but I don't have many. But I do know it was good. I think it was good. And then a big thing I do remember though is when I turned about like either between 6 and 7, we actually moved down to Texas. So I was born in Canada, Kitchener, Ontario, actually, where I am now. Where I'm back, you always find your way back home one way or another. Yeah, we moved down there. And everything kind of started over, right? Single parent, 2 young kids. She was actually looking for a nursing job. So that's where this all came about, to be a nurse. And they were hiring jobs down there in Texas. So we moved to Waco, Texas. Which is an interesting place. So, I mean, it was all new for me, though. trying to meet new people and everything like that. And I had problems like my entire school life, like from the beginning till like the end of high school. Jumping around a little bit there, but yeah, I was always in trouble, in school suspension, out of school suspension, failing grades, never really interested. And I could count on one hand how many times I did homework and probably how many tests I ever passed.
Mm.
I just absolutely had no interest.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
How old were you
you
the first
too,
time you got
Dan?
loaded?
Oh, hey, it's interesting, buddy. It's interesting. Going through things there, though, I had all of those. Like I was on a medication for ADHD, Adderall and stuff, and had been going to see professionals and stuff for a lot of the behavioral stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I never really fit in with anything. Like I always kind of felt like a failure and an outsider, and I always
Mm-hmm.
had this emptiness in my stomach. It was like an anxiety, plus like a hopelessness type feeling.
Mm-hmm.
For a long time, man. So that kind of I'll get to your question.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta kind of get us there.
Yeah,
Um,
man. Walk the path. Let's go.
yeah. So I started getting in trouble though, like with the police and stuff when I was like 16, 17. Me and a couple buddies of mine were into like car hopping and stuff like that, right? That was like a thing you did, right? But in the state where I was in at the time, we were in North Carolina. We moved. When I was like 13, 14, when I was like, no, like 12, 13, we moved to North Carolina. And I kind of had to start all over there again with meeting people, with like fitting in, with like not being good in school, with like
Mm-hmm.
being a behavioral problem and yeah, all that type of stuff, not following rules.
Yeah.
And then I got my first criminal charges when I was 16. But if felony offense in North Carolina, there's two states. If you're 16, you're considered an adult.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like pretty serious. I didn't think it was very serious, but it was really serious, and I had to go to jail and do a bail process. Sorry, and I had to do all that, right? And I
Yeah.
still wasn't really able to get things figured out. And I got put on probation for a year. So a lot of people start out in high school with their substance use and all that type of stuff, party stuff. I never did, because from when I was 16 till when I was 16 to when I was 17, it was, which I would say between like probably 14 and 16, most people are getting started on something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I didn't have access when I was 14 to like 15. My parents never drank. They never drank around me, did anything like that. Never did any drugs or anything
Mm-hmm.
that I knew of anyway. So I didn't really have access. I wasn't really into that type stuff. And then when I was 16, when I got on the probation, I had to do urine samples. So I did
Mm-hmm.
like weekly urine samples. Even though I didn't have a substance problem, it was still mandated from the court that I do these urine tests. And then if I failed these urine tests, I would be going to jail probably for like a year.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like without like having a substance abuse problem, it probably wasn't going to be a good time to start. So I
Mm-hmm.
never started. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
I did that. The probation was tough. I mean, I still don't follow rules. The probation officer, now down in the States, it's a lot different, right? They come to your school, they have a sidearm, they have a jacket. People know who
Wow.
they are. They check in with you. Your teachers know. It's very shameful sort of approach, like a big babysitter, but with a lot of authority. Like the probation officers don't. And I know in Canada, because I've worked with a bunch of probation officers, they would dress like an ordinary person and be ordinary people. These probation officers there are far from that. This lady I had, yeah, she was really strict. Like if I skipped a class or different things, right? It was the hammer was coming down, and I had to go
Uh-huh.
back to court once because I was skipping class. Like I was struggling with depression, anxiety. I mean, I was overly defiant too.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really struggling, but yeah, I had to go back to court one time because she was wanting me to do jail weekends, like for a couple months because of
Mm-hmm.
missing class. This is 16 years old, but
Hmm.
I
So you were
still didn't
doing
turn. I
you were doing all this stuff and you weren't even getting loaded. Like were your friends getting loaded? Like why
no,
didn't you? Surely it must have been around if you're having all of this other behavior and being in this scene.
yeah, yeah, no. I mean, it's a good question, man, but it really
Mm-hmm.
wasn't around.
Huh.
The people I hung out with they were like I wasn't really into that, to hanging out with that crowd of
Mm-hmm.
people that were like, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of had my trouble, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
it was enough trouble at the time. I just really, I don't know if I was just not looking for more. It's a
Mm-hmm.
weird, yeah, it's a weird thing how it played out, man.
Yeah,
It is
maybe
really
you're like,
weird.
"Man, I'll be a better criminal if I'm not high."
Yeah, yeah, maybe I'll be
So,
more creative. Yeah, I wasn't really connected to, like, there was like other guys and stuff, and that were partying and stuff, and I just really wasn't like a cool dude to like
mm-hmm.
go to these parties and get 21 there to buy beer. Like, I didn't know anybody who was 21 to like buy beer. My parents didn't have
Mm-hmm.
beer. I wasn't invited to the parties where they're smoking and drinking. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a cool dude. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like, so those kind of probably all kind of factored into it in a sense, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
um, but I mean, I kept getting in trouble, man. So my parents, and I ended up in the psych ward twice for suicide attempts.
Mm-hmm.
So my parents, um, were looking for me to go to a treatment, more of like not a drug program, but more of a behavioral type program,
Mm-hmm.
for teenagers. So they said they had some people come to the psych ward when I was there, to the hospital, and do like interviews for like, hey, we want you to, your parents want you to get help. Like, we're a program where you can volunteer to come. And like, I was just not interested. I
Mm-hmm.
at that point in my life, I didn't see that like anything was really too far off. I thought,
Mm-hmm.
well, this is just a phase, and I'll move through it, and like, I'll be something someday. The reality
Yeah.
is, like, continuing that way, like, I would have no nothing would have come from anything.
So
um
what tipped you over into substance use then? Like, how did that? Tell us about that.
yeah, yeah. I got one more thing before we get to that, before we get
Sorry.
there. That's okay. And so yeah, so my parents, they eventually made a decision to send me to this non-voluntary treatment program. So it was like a 1-year program, wilderness program in Knoxville, Tennessee, where I had a private security detail pick me up from the hospital, um, and then drive me to this facility, um, because my parents and I weren't getting along at the time at all, because
Mm-hmm.
I thought everything they were doing was unjust and everything else, right? So, um, on the way to this facility, though, I actually ran from the security company,
Wow.
and then they had a huge, police, like the police, state troopers, sheriffs, everybody. Took like 4 or 5 hours, and then they finally found me. But yeah, that was kind of crazy for
Mm-hmm.
like at the time. So I went to this program, man, and it was a very different program. It was a lockdown unit for 4 months. No talking, no getting out of your bed. Follow strict rules. Raise your hand. Eat your meals when you're supposed to. Go to bed. Wake up. And everything was strictly enforced. It's called Peninsula Village. It's no longer around. There's too many lawsuits, against it. But
Mm-hmm.
so I was there for 12 months, man, and a lot of people there struggle with substance use. The idea of the program was to break you down and then build you back up. After your 4-month graduation, you moved into a cabin program, where you would learn, different life skills and live with other people struggling, and live with the counselors and everything else. So I could talk about that for weeks, but
Mm-hmm.
that was the program. I got out of that program. I actually went to college. I got into college. And then I stopped doing what I needed to do. So it wasn't, and then substances became available. So that's sort of, the story there. So
Mm-hmm.
I moved out. I got my own apartment at 18. I had a job, at this restaurant, and I was
Mm-hmm.
in college. I was dating this girl. Everything was good. Like, I had, like, completely in a year, like, completely turned my life into like a derailed train into like something that was much more manageable, and possibly had some good stuff coming from it.
Mm-hmm.
I was hanging out with some buddies
Thanks to
one
this
night.
program that you
Mhm.
graduated. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was a terrible program, and at first, I never thought it would be something that I would ever say like helped me, because it
Mm-hmm.
was really rigid program, strict program, restraints, straight jackets, stuff like that, to kind of
Wow.
get people to. to conform in a sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
No ministry oversight, not like something you'd have here in Canada where there would be ministry and there would be reporting and stuff. There was
What
none
was
of
it,
that. It
like
was
a sovereign state or what? Were they flying their own flag? Like, had to wonder how they
yeah.
got away with all that shit.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is kind of interesting. I mean, a lot of people, there's a lot of problems from it, from people like traumatized, obviously from
Mm-hmm.
stuff that happened, but it was the worst of the worst. It was the last place. It was the last place that you could go because you couldn't run from it. Like if you decided to run from the place or try to escape, like they would catch you. It was on a peninsula, so three sides, Tennessee River, which you couldn't necessarily, unless you were Olympic swimmer, you're probably not going to cross.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like that, but yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
my whole thing, I got started into using prescription pills. That was my first dabble in things, buddy, and I fell in love. All of
Mm-hmm.
those problems I talked about previously went away. They did a really good job at killing the pain.
Mm-hmm.
All the insecurities went away. I've had some confidence in myself. My brain shut off for a little bit. I got some relief. My brain is always constantly went,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes for good things, but a lot of times back then it was just negative stuff and um, everything I'd failed at and everything I wasn't doing right and everybody I let down. I used to just constantly have those thoughts. And when my buddies, we were actually playing a poker game, and when my buddies had the medicine there, and I had no idea, man. I had no education on this stuff. And like when I look back, I even think to myself, like, how could you have been so naive to think
Mm-hmm.
that, the way I thought about it was like, this is prescribed by a doctor. This is safe. It says take, 2 to 6 a day. I'm only going to have two. I'm not going to have any for the rest of the day. I'll be good.
Mm-hmm.
But it grabbed a hold of me, buddy. From that night, it wasn't like in the movies to where like everything's gone out the window like the next day.
Yeah.
It took time, but
Yeah.
once I found that, I started to get into cocaine as well. So I
Yeah.
started to do. I linked up with an old buddy of mine that I'd known since like grade 5, and found out he was into this, this business and everything. Um, and I just found like my program of recovery and like for my behavioral stuff and my self-esteem and everything, I just laid off on it. I stopped going to see my psychiatrist. I stopped going to see my therapist. I stopped taking my medication. Um, and I stopped doing stuff because I thought I had something figured out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a lot of work. Like to keep things going, it was a lot of work for me. So these pills made it easier because the pills could do what all that other stuff was doing for me, but without doing all the other
Without
stuff.
doing
I
the
could have
stuff.
the
Yeah.
relief.
Mm-hmm.
I could have the relief. So I popped into that, buddy. And, the snowball went down the hill. The pills dried up. The pills got too expensive. It's the same story I've heard so many times.
Mm-hmm.
And the introduction to heroin comes along. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when, things went downhill. And I mean, there's a whole lot of lost jobs, destroyed relationships. I got evicted from that first apartment I had. I got academic probation from college. I eventually got kicked out of college. I got a car. My parents bought me a car for like 15 grand. I got that repossessed like 3 or 4 months later. It was gone.
Mm-hmm.
I got another felony criminal charge now when I was 18 for breaking into a motor vehicle. So that was an adult felony.
Mm-hmm.
My parents kicked me out of the house. After I lost the apartment, I moved back in with them, but then they said like, that's enough. The cops came there like 3 or 4 times. I have a younger brother as well. I have a
Mm-hmm.
twin brother and a younger step brother. And they couldn't have that stuff around the house. So they kind of drew a red line, 18, 19 years old, losing jobs. I eventually ended up on my brother's couch. He had this at his apartment. He had a roommate too, but kind of was like, well, I lived at this girl's parents' place for a bit too. Like I was
Yeah.
just kind of bummy, man,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
wherever I could just kind of weasel my way into until
Mm-hmm.
I burned the bridge. I tried
Yeah.
to,
Yeah. So what finally did it for you? Like what brought you to the end?
Yeah. Well, I did. I was, yeah, what I tried, I was actually selling cars at the time, man. I was
Like
working for Michael
legit or
Jordan. You
like
ever heard of him?
Like legit selling cars, or was it like
Yeah.
selling
Yeah, no,
cars?
it's legit. Yeah, I worked at Michael Jordan Nissan.
Huh.
And yeah, so I was working there, buddy, and I was making decent money. So that was kind of fueling this habit. I didn't have any other overhead bills. Like I was just, like I said before, just bumming up people places to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of had this idea, man, that this was just headed in a really bad direction.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of like things that happened, man. I'm sure like most of us who've been down there can relate. It just ends up bad. You get yourself in bad and dangerous situations. And I was doing that a lot. And I just thought, like, what else could I do, right? So I looked up on Google, man. I'm like, what can I do? I was feeling the withdrawal all the time, and it was just killing me, man. I couldn't show up to work. I was having a hard time showing up for life, but I was already spending $1,500 a week, and I didn't have any more cash, and I didn't want to go to prison because I was on probation again. This
Mm-hmm.
time, as weird as it is, Dan, figure this out. This time they didn't drug test me. It wasn't part of the conditions. When
Oh
I
no,
was actually
he's good. He's good. Yeah.
Well, I told my lawyer, I said I was stealing from the cars to pay credit card debt. So they believed it, I guess. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. So, and that probably would have helped me if I was getting the drug test.
Yeah.
But you have to pay for the probation and everything too. So you have to pay like $60 a week. And I didn't even really have that. So I was in a lot of trouble too with that because I didn't even have that. Everything was building up, man. Like I was going absolutely nowhere. I was living on my brother's couch. I Googled up what to do, man. The withdrawals were killing me. Like I was just sick all the time. And I just I couldn't do it, man. So I got on methadone. So I did a methadone program. I didn't tell anybody. I drove to this little building. I mean, it looked like the dumpiest building, buddy, that you'd ever want to go into. And this was probably I wouldn't say the beginning of methadone at all, but this was towards the beginning of the mainstream methadone clinics, all over the city. And it was a strange place, but I went in there, and that same day, buddy, I left out with my methadone, and that was kind of the beginning of my recovery journey in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of the first thing I did for myself. Like when I look back now, and I'm like, yeah, the right thing to do or not right thing to do, but at least I did something. So it was that was kind of the turning point, man.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna take a quick break. So, did you abstain since then? Did you remain abstinent from the street stuff?
No, not since I was on when I was on the methadone. I was on the methadone program for a year.
Mm-hmm.
I would still dabble into cocaine, other stuff too, man. I don't know if we want to get into the long list of it, but no,
Yeah,
I wasn't. Man,
this and this. Send us a list. We'll display it on the screen.
Yeah. No, I was into a few things, man, but you know what? It offered some stability for my life, which I didn't have beforehand because I was living that chaotic life of spending money, being broke, committing crime, being on probation, stealing from people, or getting money from people, toxic relationships. So it kind of made things a little bit less chaotic. But I mean, the thing with the methadone program too, for me at the time, is it wasn't a recovery. There was no recovery involved. There was no now let's work on your life.
There was relief.
They would try to get me to go to Sorry?
There was relief, not recovery.
Yeah, exactly. So they tried. I got to give them a little bit of credit. And I had to pay $12 a day. So it still wasn't the cheapest thing in the world. Plus I had to drive there at 6 o'clock in the morning every day using my brother's car because I didn't have one. Pay for gas. So it cost me about $20 a day, which adds up when, you don't have much to begin with. Yeah, but they did try to get me to go to counseling, and they told me they'd cut me off and they'd do this and this, but I just kind of weaseled out of it, man. I think I was just ready to stop the sickness, but I don't know if I was really ready to open up the closet to see what
Mm-hmm.
else was going on. Like, did I want to go back there? Because I knew how hard that was because I did it for 12 months before,
Mm-hmm.
and
So,
there was still,
so how long did
yeah.
that go on for? Like, how long did it go on when you were on this program? Like what flipped the switch for you to realize that you needed to start doing some work?
Yeah. Another good question, man.
Oh, that's what I do.
Yeah, that's it. I love it, man. Yeah, so I was on the methadone for probably about a year, buddy. My life didn't improve other than the fact that I wasn't, shooting dope, jumping rope, and eating cantaloupe, buddy. My
Hmm.
life was still shit. My relationships were still shit. Um, I was working a job at Little Caesars Pizza, and I wasn't happy with doing that. I would walk there, maybe 15 miles every day. Buddy, in North
Oh.
Carolina, it gets over 100. It was hot. It sucked. Then I was still hanging out with people that just, I don't know, they were good people, but together we weren't good. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
just weren't doing anything. We were just sitting at the pool all day, hanging out, talking about everything we wanted to do in life.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't going to do anything but, go to bed at night and waste another day. Um, and in my brother's apartment too, he used to have people over. This really was hard for me. He'd have people over and stuff, and I had to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning every day to go pick up the methadone. So I wasn't really much of a party guy to try to avoid being sick. And I never got the take home carries, and I never got any of that stuff because I was
Mm-hmm.
always having a dirty screen. Um, so I'd have to sleep on the floor in his bedroom. And, one day I woke up and I'm like, I just got to get off of this stuff. It was shameful, dude, being on the methadone and stuff, like being controlled by something.
Mm-hmm.
It just was terrible. Even though it was different than maybe the street stuff. It was just terrible. The place, they just didn't treat you good.
Mm-hmm.
They called you by a number. I was just like, dude, I can't live like this either. I couldn't live
Mm-hmm.
like the other way I was living. It took me a while to figure that out. I can't live
Mm-hmm.
like the way I'm living right now because I have no life. I can't do anything.
Yeah.
Um, so I picked up the 500,000 pound phone. I called my grandparents, who are like 70 years old, up in Canada, and I told them, like, I need help. I didn't have anybody else who was going to help me. My parents already dumped probably 200 grand into programs and treatments, and they all served a great purpose, but I wasn't there yet. Um, my brother had housed me at his place, and he didn't have, stuff, and I didn't have any insurance or none of that stuff, right? So call my grandparents, man. It's just another turning point. They came down to North Carolina. Um, they picked me up, buddy. They set me up with a detox facility and a treatment facility in South Florida. So we drove straight down there, from Canada all the way down. And I went to this program, and did a detox, man, a cold turkey detox off methadone. It was
Mm-hmm.
terrible. It was a horrible experience. Um, it was 7 or 8 days. It was a
Mm-hmm.
$1,000 a day. Um,
Holy cow.
and yeah, that's US too.
Yeah, no doubt. Wow. I
um,
hope it was a really nice place. Like, did they feed you well at least?
yeah, you
Probably.
had your own chef, buddy.
Yeah, you probably didn't want to eat much.
No, I mean, yeah, yeah, not as much as I would have if like I would have been on vacation there or anything.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, it's hard to come off the methadone, man. It's really hard, and none of that. It's kind of like that naive part of like even getting started with these prescription pills to begin with,
mm-hmm.
and then the methadone thing too was never really, and maybe it's my own fault
Mm-hmm.
looking into this stuff, but I never knew, man, that this stuff was gonna be like this. It
Mm-hmm.
was brutal, and it was brutal for like 6 months.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah.
I lost probably 50 pounds. I didn't sleep a full night for 6 months. Some nights I didn't sleep at all, and the anxiety is just like, oh man, it was just brutal, buddy. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in the fear, you feel like this fear from like just, yeah, it was
Irrational.
heavy.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, it was heavy. So, but that was a good next step for me, man. All this stuff is sort of playing,
Mm-hmm.
it's all sort of playing its own role. I started to hit meetings. I started to hit Celebrate Recovery, NA meetings, Smart Recovery meetings. I
Mm-hmm.
started to get around people, who were interested and who had what I was looking for. And that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like when my recovery, in a sense, started. Um, I met a counselor there and I talked with him too. And then, he's just like, yeah, I mean, it's just, you're probably not going to survive this shit, and it kind of hit me. And I'm like, that's what I've been thinking to myself, for a while now is, yeah, I probably won't. And if I do, I'll be by myself, like probably in prison somewhere. That's really where I was headed because I already had 2 strikes. So another strike that would have been the deal. And it actually did happen, but
yeah, we're not there yet. So,
no.
I heard you mention Celebrate Recovery. I heard you mention Smart Recovery. I heard you mention the rooms. Out of the programs that you attended, out of those meetings that you were a part of, which one brought you the most relief? Like, where did you feel that you fit the best?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the Celebrate Recovery because of the 3-hour model. So you'd go in, and I'm not a religious person at all. I'm more of a spiritual person. But I really liked how it was, music. You popped in, your first hour was like music or a testimony or something that somebody else sharing, right? It was like, and then you did 1 hour split up groups. You would split up male, female. You'd split up substance use and other sort of things, right? So the groups I went to, it tended to be small groups, 5, 6 guys, older guys, mentors, like smart people, man. And I grabbed onto that. I was the youngest guy in probably, I don't know, 95% of meetings I went to. And these guys were so interested in trying to help. I think a lot of guys were like, I look back at my life and, I wasted 20 years, 30 years doing this shit, and I'm here now. So you're here and you can avoid the 20 or 30. And they really helped outside the meetings. They really helped invest time. But then with Celebrate Recovery, once the meeting's over, everybody would connect again in a cafeteria or something, have pizza or, whatever that was what had, and then you could, have a coffee and hang out with everybody. So I really enjoyed that aspect of things.
You ended up going so after you had found some recovery and found some stability, you went back down to the States. Now, maybe I'm going to get this wrong because I'm trying to remember the conversation we had, but you went back down to the States and as soon as you got off the plane, you got arrested, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So after I did the rehab, after I went to the detox, my grandparents came back here. They came back to North Carolina. I went back to my brother's place and they pitched the idea that I move up here with them. Now, I grew up in North Carolina. I had all my friends there, my family there. It's what I knew. And they wanted me to come back up here with them. And I was hesitant at first. I'm like, I can't do that. I'm leaving everything behind. I was in this relationship and stuff too. And I'm like, I can't do that. But then they came to my brother's apartment one morning at 4:00 and they were like, the police are at your parents' house like every other day looking for you. Like, what do you know what I mean? You want to come with us or not? I packed up all I had, buddy, which was probably, I don't know, 5 outfits, man, if that. And I packed it all up and I left and I came up here. And I stayed with them, for like 6 months. And I got a job. I got a painting job. And things were better, man. I was staying sober. And my life wasn't great, dude. I was coming through the methadone stuff. I knew nobody. I had no friends, nothing. But like things were getting better. Things were definitely getting better. I was feeling better about myself. I had this job. I showed up. Like I never did that before. I was terrible with jobs. So, and then I wanted to go back and visit my folks. My folks were still in North Carolina, and then I had this relationship with this girl that I was, trying to kindle. I was changed and all this stuff. So I was excited to do that and everything like that. So I got on the airplane. But when I went to Toronto Pearson, they were asking me so many different questions, and they took me in this special room and searched my bags. And I kind of had a hunch that something was up, but I didn't really put my finger on it. And they were like, "Oh, it's a big misunderstanding. We're gonna get you. We're gonna get you on your way shortly." And I did a connecting flight New York, no problems. Once I got off the plane in North Carolina, there was the cops, the whole everything, buddy.
Like, was it a big scene? Was there like people with guns and like helicopters flying over? Oh,
no,
Brad, get him!
No. It wasn't like
come
that. It
on.
was like 4 or 5. It was like 4 or 5 cops.
Yeah.
I mean, strategically positioned.
Yeah.
There, waiting for me,
Strategically
buddy.
positioned.
Yeah, and I was arrested, man. And I didn't understand the severity of it until maybe a couple days later. So they took me out front, man, and this girl that I was going to see too, along with my family. But I've let this girl down, and I dated her for a couple years, and I've let her down so many times, man. You know, like I'm like countless times of everything. You know, just not good with it. And she was picking me up from the airport, buddy, and they have at the airports, you know, you drive by and pick people up. Well, I'm sitting on the back of this cop car, and I see her drive by, and it was just, I mean, it was just, I'm just like, fuck, man, like you did it again, dude. You know, it's like you can't get this stuff figured out, man. Like you just keep getting in shit. So yeah, and then I talked with her later once I was in the jail. A couple days later, I called her and she's like, "Yeah, they called me on the loud pager to pick up your bags and stuff." She's like, "I don't know what happened," and I'm just like, it was just those types of things. I was like, I just don't want to live like this anymore. Just letting everybody down, you know. So that was kind of another turning point for me, man. That's kind of like when I got arrested, and then that was a year-long ordeal that I was in prison for. I got charged with 3 counts of drug trafficking. I had sold drugs to an undercover police officer like 2 years prior, but they just couldn't find me because I was off the grid. I had no residence, no car, no problem. Well, I might have had a driver's license, but I had my parents' address, and I didn't really go around there much. Yeah. So
at what point?
That ended up.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So that's really the date. That date that happened, January 11th, 2010, buddy. That's really what I call my recovery date. My date where the part of not using substances lined up with the way I wanted to live, in a sense. You know what I mean? Because the other time I wasn't all the way in there. Like I was doing what I needed to do, but I wasn't sold on the idea. I always figured I'd be back doing the same shit at some point. It's all I knew. It was all I knew for so long. So
I screwed up the turning point again, is what you're telling me. See, I told you
No,
before the
not
show.
at
I
all.
told you before the show I'm going to screw up the turning point.
No, I mean, I think like what we talked about is there's just more than one. You know, and when I went into the jail and stuff, man, I spent a year, you know, reflecting on my life and reading and learning self-help and finding mentors, as crazy as it seems, like finding mentors in jail. And I was, you know, just trying to figure out, you know, what I wanted to do with my life, man. And what I wanted to do is become a counselor. I wanted to work with people who struggle with addiction. So I got sentenced 8 to 10 months. And then after that, because I only held a green card in the US, I had to be deported after. That was part of the deal. I was facing 20 years, 356 months. I think it's about 20 something years for these charges, buddy. And this wasn't like suitcases full of stuff either. This was like a pill bottle, you know, not to say like it wasn't much, but like for 20 years,
It
you
seems
know,
extreme.
I wasn't flying a plane over the border or anything like that. I might have made $300 off the deal. So I had to plead guilty to all this stuff, which basically got me 3 or 4 more felonies with already the record I had. And then I would have to do like a deportation thing, which I thought would go relatively quick, but they held me in different jails throughout the United States for like the next 2 to 3 months. So I'd stay in a jail for a week, and then they'd bus you to another jail, and another jail, and another jail. And it's one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And then the U.S. Marshals picked me up after like 2.5, 3 months and brought me into the backside of the international airport in Atlanta, Georgia, and just took me up this side ladder into this plane, buddy. And that was it, man. You know, they waited until the door closed, and I got a one-way ticket back to Toronto, buddy. And that was, you know, I mean, it was great that it happened when it did.
Yeah.
because I was in such a better place than if they would have just pulled me off the street, because it's ruthless there. You're not probably going to get methadone if you're on methadone, at least
Mm-hmm.
then. Now you may. Um, and you got to be ready, man. I mean, not that you get to choose when you go to jail, but like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like something was choosing for me that I would be ready, because it's rough. It's rough, man.
Yeah, man.
It's
Yeah.
rough. It's, you need to be prepared. And, I was well equipped in a sense when I went to, mindset wise, I'm not like a big scrapper or anything,
Yeah. Yeah.
but mindset wise, I was able to, to deal with it.
So
So
at what point did your life, like, you get out of jail, you get your ass flown back to Toronto. At what point did
God,
your,
baby.
yeah, I get that. I wonder, they probably watched you fly off into the sunset just to make sure the plane didn't go down. There's Brad parachuting out.
The parachute, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
So at what point did it get good? Okay, so you're in recovery now. You found some acceptance, you found some surrender. You're back on the street, so to speak. When does it get good?
Yeah, man. So when I got out of jail, buddy, that was, I always had this reservation of going back to Carolina, and that's where like all the problems were for me. So I feel like that's sort of another godsend, man. Something happened there, buddy, that I wasn't meant to be there, and this was the intervention that the universe was making. Is like, you want to go back there and play with fire? We'll make sure you can't go back there and play with fire.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the best thing that ever happened, man. So I got out of jail, and when I was in jail, I had a couple goals, buddy. I wanted to buy a house by the time I was 30. I wanted to go to school and be an addiction counselor, and I wanted to have a German Shepherd dog. So when I got out of jail, I started looking in how I'm going to get to school. How am I going to get into school, buddy? So I got into college. I graduated college as an addiction counselor, and I got a job at a youth residential treatment facility in Ontario here called Portage. They have a couple of them over over Canada. And I got a job there, and things were good, man. Like, I was doing recovery.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing recovery, and I was feeling better about my life. And like, man, I think since then, buddy, I mean, I couldn't even think about a time I've thought to be going back to the way I used to live.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't even really cross my mind in a sense. Like, it's kind of like, dude, what the heck?
Yeah. So tell us,
like, it was,
yeah. Sorry.
It was just such. People always ask, right? And like, well, do you ever think? Are you worried about going back to doing it? And I'm like, well, I mean, a percentage of me is. I guess it's scary, but I've replaced it with other stuff now. Like, I don't want to lose everything. Yeah. For something that I know doesn't work. It works really good for a bit, but I know
for like 5 minutes. Yeah. The first 5 minutes is bliss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it causes too many problems, and it's so dangerous now. Like, it's really, really dangerous, So yeah, I worked at the treatment center there as a clinical caseworker for, it was like 5 or 6 years. 5 years. And it was good, man. It served its purpose. It was like the next thing for me to do. And then it wasn't anymore. I went to more funerals from residents there, and we were a youth program, 14 to 19. And, I would say over a dozen people, over a dozen teenagers, young adults have died from that I worked with there from an overdose. And it's a heavy industry to work in. To work with people. So, it's just taking its toll, buddy. And teenagers too are, challenging, right? It's challenging to work with teenagers. Sometimes it's tough. And,
So tell us, how did the sober motivation platforms come to be? Like, how did that idea wash over you?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, I was working there, and I had this vision, man. I wanted to create something online. I heard some chatter about it, from different people, like to do this stuff online and everything. And I'm like, well, these are kind of my skills, and this is maybe what I could bring. And I was like, I want to make a course, man, like a book, a workbook that people could help people, from a peer perspective, somebody who's been through it that could help them, right? So that's where this all started for me online. So
Mm-hmm.
I quit the job at the treatment center with no other plan. My wife was pregnant at the time with our first child,
Mm-hmm.
and I went in on a Sunday morning, and I just put in my resignation, buddy, in my boss's box. And after my shift, I never went back, and I never heard from him. I never heard from her. And I was burned out. I was completely burned out from doing it, and most of the people I worked with were burned out as well. Yeah, so I quit, man, and I'm like, I'm gonna bring this stuff to the masses, buddy. I'm gonna just try to help people and serve people, and I'll find a way that I can maybe make a living from it.
Mm-hmm.
Made a workbook with a buddy of mine, and we started a Facebook group. It's called Recovery for the Beginner, and that's where we first kind of started out with online, and we gained 10,000 members in like a month's time. So I was like, there's something here. We have to try to help people. You know, I was overly naive that I was going to be the guy to do it, because I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
able. One person is not able to help 10,000 people or support 10,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I came up with the idea. After I did that for about a year, and I did some coaching and stuff for people, I came up with the idea for Sober Motivation, to where we would share other people's stories, and kind of do two things with it. We would celebrate the person's story who was shared, and then we would also inspire other people who wanted something that they could relate to. And that was kind of where it came about, and this all kind of came full circle for me the other day. And I don't share, Daniel and I talked a little bit about this. I don't like make the network and the community about like me or stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I shared my story on the Instagram probably for the first time in like maybe a year or 2 years. And a buddy of mine that I went to high school with, and I used to date his sister.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't see eye to eye, but I didn't even know he was struggling. And he reached out to me and said like he appreciates the page and stuff, and I was just blown away. I'm like, this cannot be happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah, it's like motivational for me. And I'm like, okay, that's like freaking cool, man, because I never would have expected that ever.
Mm-hmm.
So then that's kind of what Sober Motivation is about, is just about those two things.
Mm-hmm.
Helping people, man, just getting the word out about what's possible.
Yeah. And one day, like I've been watching you since, like I've been watching your page since I started the Hard Knox Talks platforms. And something I noticed some time ago was Sober Buddy. And I looked into it, and it looks like a really great tool. I downloaded the free Sober Tracker, and it's got the cute little blue dude on there, and it counts down to the second. And I love that it counts down to the second, because I remember when I was like 5 minutes clean, when like 1 second, that meant something, man. So like I get that, like that you've got that mindset, like we know. So tell us how you got involved with Sober Buddy, and tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thanks for asking, and I'm so happy to hear that you enjoy it. That is, I never even thought of it from that perspective, man. But I remember when I was trying different times to get sober, buddy. Everybody's like 1 day at a time, and I'm like, buddy, I'm at an hour, dude.
Yeah, I'm not gonna make a day.
Yeah, so that's really cool. I never even thought of it like that. But no, I got into connected with Sober Buddy a few years back. So Tara Schiller, who's the CEO and co-founder, she reached out to me to help with trying to get the word out about Sober Buddy. And it was actually through Instagram. She messaged me on Instagram. We had a conversation, and then we haven't looked back since. And basically behind Sober Buddy is the goal of Sober Buddy is to offer a shame and stigma free approach to recovery. Sober Buddy's never going to be upset with you if you have a lapse or a relapse, or the day is not going the best of the best. Sober Buddy's going to support you. And that was one reason, when talking with Tara about the vision for Sober Buddy, why they didn't include a human element to it, because humans sometimes might get upset with if you're a counselor or a therapist and you work with somebody, for every day for 6 months, and then things aren't going well, it's maybe not always easy to show that you're not upset about it. But with our chat bot, Sober Buddy, he's always excited and always supporting and always rooting people on. And then we have our different challenges inside of the app. We have 7 tracks. So depending where you're at in your recovery, Sober Buddy's going to take you on your own personal journey and show you challenges that relate to where you're at. So if you're just starting out, Sober Buddy's going to go through an exploring phase to say, like, to give you challenges for you to decide whether you have a problem. How, what does this look like for you? And are you willing to make changes? And then there's different tracks for each place you check in. And at some point, we'll be adding in maintenance program track as well for people who are part of maintenance programs. We're supportive of every journey. We have some stuff, and it's evidence-based cognitive behavioral therapy, as well as other stuff that experts in the field have put together. So yeah, if you guys want to get it for the Sober Tracker or the challenges, like, check it out.
Where's it at? Where can we find it?
You can find it at yoursoberbuddy.com. Find us on Instagram at yoursoberbuddy, or just search your Apple or your Google Play Store for Sober Buddy. You'll be there. You'll know it because it'll have, like Dan said, that blue fluffy character.
Yeah. I saw it. I saw it on and the name of the woman is escaping me now, but I saw her on, I think it was just the Sober Buddy Instagram page. And she was showing the office and the little Sober Buddy fluffy stuffies that she has. And I said to her, I messaged, or I commented, I said, if those things aren't shower scrubbies, they should be. That would be, I would buy one. I would buy a Sober Buddy shower scrubby because it looks like one, right? That would be perfect. I would love it. Yeah.
It's a good idea. I'll have to make a note, man. We need the shower scrubbies.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So
that's hilarious, man.
Yeah, that's all I got for you, man. Is there?
That's it?
Well, I guess so. Other than I would like to just say thank you. I know that our paths crossed a little while ago. I like I said a little earlier, I felt like I was sort of waiting around in the darkness, trying to build connections on Facebook while I'm building my own platform, the Hard Knox Talks platform, and it was you. You were the one that messaged back and said, "Yeah, man, let's talk. Here's my phone number." And we chatted. And I just want to say thank you for your involvement and for giving me these little tips and tricks along the way and helping me grow. So thank you for that.
Of course, buddy.
Is there anything that you would like to leave us with today?
I mean, I just think if there's anybody who's struggling or something like that, I think just stay the course. Stay the course for people, because I went so many different directions, so many different times, and so many things didn't work out. But it's like the lotto, buddy. You only got to hit it once. You've got to play. How many cards or how many tickets do you got to buy? You might have to buy a lot, but you only got to hit it once. So you only got to find out what works for you once, and you're off to the races. So I just always try to encourage people just to stick with it. Don't get discouraged if what works for other people is not working for you, but also give yourself a fair try. A lot of people, myself included, I said I tried stuff. I didn't try. You got to actually put yourself out there, give stuff a solid go, and hopefully get results. And I saw a video too recently. It was like, and I think Dan, this would be on point for you too, I think, buddy, is you got to replace this obsession to escape with something that's going to help you, like a business or like a podcast show or something else that you can get fired up about. I saw a video about that, and that really hit home for me, because my recovery was good, but once I started my own business, and once I stopped using an alarm clock like 3 years ago. I don't need an alarm clock.
I know, me neither.
And I used to dread it, man. Oh yeah, and I didn't even mention now, I have 3 beautiful children and a beautiful wife too. Awesome. And it's just incredible. You know what I mean? And a German Shepherd, dude. And that thing, like, I'm telling you, the dog might be more work than the baby. Don't tell my wife.
Well, I saw a picture of the dog. It's got this giant ears. Like, I can hear my thoughts, I'm sure. Like, it knows what I'm thinking.
He recorded the podcast, man.
Yeah. He's going to go and translate now.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's
man.
it, buddy. I just grateful for being on here, buddy. Thank you, as always, man. I love what you're doing.
Awesome. Okay, well, we'll see you out in social media land, my friend. Take care.
All right, buddy. Adios.
There's power in numbers. If you would like to end the stigma, if you'd like to contribute to ending the stigma around emotional pain, please subscribe to our Facebook page and follow us on Instagram. Find us on all audio podcast platforms. Like and comment your thoughts on our posts. Let us come together with our lived and living experience as a resource that has the power to engage new thought processes, to promote new ideas, to broaden the spectrum of care, and to show the world that the lie is dead. We can recover. There is a safer way, and we're here to show you how. Take care, everyone.